The Arizona sun burned white and merciless over the open land. Heat shimmered across the dusty road as Sarah Nelson stood alone beside her trunk at Willow Creek Stage. The stagecoach that had brought her here was gone, leaving only the echo of hooves and a trail of dust drifting into the distance. She clutched a crumpled note in her trembling hand, the last thing her husband Thomas had left behind. Her breath hitched as she read it again, though she could have recited it by heart. Found a better opportunity. Don't try to follow. Sorry it ended this way. Thomas. The words burned more than the desert heat. Sarah pressed a shaking hand to her swollen belly, 6 months heavy with child. Her back ached, and the fear in her chest felt like something alive, crawling up her throat. Out here, a woman alone might as well be a ghost. The old station master Joe leaned out of the shade of the depot, his hat tilted low. "Ma'am, you been standing there near an hour now," he called gently. "Ain't no eastbound coach comin' till Thursday." Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat. "He's not coming back," she said quietly, her voice breaking. "He took the money, all of it." Joe's face softened. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Maybe we can send word to your folks?" "I left them in Boston," she said bitterly. "I left everything for 'em." The wind picked up, carrying dust and the faint sound of a wagon in the distance. Joe squinted toward the sound, shading his eyes. "Well, looks like luck might be sendin' us a visitor after all." A wagon appeared over the rise, 4 horses pulling a heavy load of supplies. The man driving it handled the reins with practiced ease. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with the steady confidence of someone used to hard work and quiet responsibility. When he stopped, he climbed down in one smooth motion. His hat shadowed most of his face, but when he looked up, Sarah saw clear blue eyes that held more kindness than she expected from a stranger. "Didn't expect you in today, Lucas," Joe greeted. "Couldn't wait," the man replied, his voice deep and even. He nodded toward Sarah. "What's the trouble here?" "Mrs. Nelson's been left stranded," Joe said, glancing between them. Sarah straightened, trying to keep her dignity. "My husband left me," she admitted, forcing the words out. "I'll manage somehow." The stranger removed his hat respectfully. "Lucas Crawford, ma'am. Seems you're in some trouble." Sarah's chin lifted slightly. "It's only temporary." Lucas's gaze took in her fine but dusty dress, her pale hands unused to hard labor, and finally her rounded belly. "Where's your husband now?" Her lips trembled. "Gone west. He won't be coming back." Lucas looked at the note she handed him. His jaw tightened as he read. "That's not a husband," he said quietly. "That's a coward." The words hit something deep inside her. She nodded once, unable to speak. Joe shifted awkwardly. "Lucas runs the Circle C Ranch, 12 miles yonder. Big place, good man." Lucas gave him a look that silenced whatever Joe had planned to add. Then he turned back to Sarah. "Mrs. Nelson, I've got 2 young children at home. Lost their mother last winter. I've been trying to manage, but they need more than I can give them alone." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "My children need love, ma'am, and it seems you and your child might need a place to belong." Sarah blinked in disbelief. "Are you offering me a position?" "I'm offering a practical arrangement," he said simply. "You need shelter. I need help with my children. I'm not talking about romance, just survival, for all of us." Sarah looked out at the empty horizon. The thought of being alone in this wilderness terrified her, yet to accept the offer of a stranger, it was unthinkable. "You don't know me," she said softly. "I know enough," he replied. "You're a Boston schoolteacher who took a chance on the wrong man. You're scared, but you haven't given up. That's enough for me." Something in his steady voice broke through her fear. Slowly she nodded. "Very well, Mr. Crawford. I'll accept your offer." Lucas tipped his hat. "Then we'd best get you home." He lifted her trunk with one hand and helped her into the wagon. His touch was firm but gentle. As they started down the long dirt road toward his ranch, Sarah watched the barren land roll by, red dust, thorn bushes, and endless sky. "Do you regret it already?" she asked after a long silence. Lucas glanced her way. "No, ma'am, but I reckon you might once you see how much work's waitin' for you." She gave a faint smile. "I'm not afraid of hard work, Mr. Crawford." "Lucas," he corrected quietly. If we're to live under the same roof, best get used to first names. The wagon crested a hill and Sarah caught her breath. Below stretched the Circle C Ranch, wide green pastures bordered by cottonwoods, a sturdy barn, and a two-story White House that seemed to rise proudly from the land. "This is yours?" she asked. "Was my father's? I just try not to ruin it." As they pulled up, two children burst out of the house. A boy of 7 with solemn eyes, and a girl of 4 whose laughter filled the yard. "Pa! You brought someone!" the girl cried, running to him. Then she stopped short, staring at Sarah's belly. "Is there a baby in there?" Lucas chuckled, lifting her onto his hip. "Yes, Lily. This is Mrs. Sarah Nelson. She'll be staying with us for a while." The boy, Daniel, stood quietly. "Is she going to be our new ma?" he asked bluntly. Sarah froze, but Lucas's voice was calm. "Mrs. Nelson needs our help, and we need hers. That's all for now." An older woman appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on an apron. "About time you got back," she scolded good-naturedly. "These young ones been wearing me out." "Mrs. Abernathy," Lucas said, "this is Mrs. Nelson. She'll be taking over household duties." The woman gave Sarah a skeptical look. "Household duties? In her condition? Well, good luck to you both." As Mrs. Abernathy led her inside, Sarah took in the dusty furniture, the cluttered rooms, the air of quiet neglect. It was clear this house had missed a woman's touch. "I'll manage," she said quietly. By supper, she had swept the floors, prepared stew, and arranged the table. She sat opposite Lucas, acutely aware of the children watching her every move. "Mrs. Nelson used to teach school in Boston," Lucas said, breaking the silence. Lily's eyes brightened. "Can you teach me my letters?" Sarah smiled. "I'd love to." The little girl grinned, and even Daniel's serious face softened a little. That night, after the children slept, Sarah found herself in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes when Lucas stepped in. "You should rest," he said quietly. "You've done enough for one day." "My condition doesn't stop me from helping," she replied, then softened. "Forgive me, it's been quite a day." He poured her a cup of coffee. "No forgiveness needed. We made an arrangement, but that means you take care of yourself, too." She met his eyes. "Why did you help me, Lucas? You don't even know me." He looked down, his voice rough. "Because I've seen what happens to women left alone out here. And because my Emma would have done the same." The mention of his late wife silenced her. She looked away, her heart aching. Not just for herself, but for the quiet sorrow in this man's voice. As she lay that night in a room that once belonged to another woman, Sarah placed a hand on her belly and whispered to her unborn child, "We're safe now." Outside, the desert wind moaned softly against the walls of Circle C Ranch. Somewhere between fear and hope, Sarah Nelson began to believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of her story. Morning light spilled over the Crawford Ranch, soft and golden across the valley. Roosters crowed, horses snorted in the corral, and the smell of coffee and wood smoke filled the air. Sarah woke to those sounds, unfamiliar yet comforting. For the first time since Thomas had left her, she felt a faint sense of belonging. Lucas had already gone out to the fields when she entered the kitchen. Mrs. Abernathy, the older housekeeper, was there, kneading bread dough. "You're up early," she said without looking up. "I wanted to learn the routine," Sarah replied. Mrs. Abernathy eyed her belly. "Routine's not for the faint-hearted. You sure you can manage?" Sarah smiled softly. "I can manage." And she did. Though her back ached and her legs swelled by noon, she cleaned, cooked, and saw to the children as if she'd always belonged there. Lily followed her like a shadow, full of questions, while Daniel watched quietly from a distance, suspicious of change. By the time Lucas returned that evening, Sarah had transformed the kitchen into order. Dishes shone, herbs hung drying near the window, and the smell of stew filled the room. He paused in the doorway, surprised. "The place looks different," he said. "A woman's touch," she answered, before realizing how that might sound. Her cheeks flushed. Lucas didn't seem to notice. "Daniel and Lily behave?" "They're good children," she said. "They just miss their mother." His face darkened for a moment, shadowed by memory. "Yeah, we all do." That night, when the children were asleep, Lucas found Sarah sorting linens by lamplight. "You've done more in one day than I've managed in months," he said quietly. "I'm a teacher by trade," she replied, folding a sheet. "Order keeps me steady." He nodded, watching her for a moment. "You don't talk much about your husband." Sarah froze. "There isn't much to say. He dreamed big and gave up easy. When I told him I was expecting, he said he wasn't ready to be tied down." Lucas's eyes softened. "Some men don't deserve the title." Sarah met his gaze. "And some take on burdens that aren't theirs." They stood there in silence, the air between them thick with unspoken things. Then Lucas said gently, "Get some rest, Sarah. Mornings come early out here." The days fell into rhythm after that. Mornings began before dawn, with the sound of hooves and the clatter of pails. Sarah taught Lily her letters, encouraged Daniel's sketching, and found herself laughing again. Each night, Lucas joined them for supper, his quiet presence steady as the land around them. But even peace in the West was fragile. One afternoon, Lucas returned from town earlier than usual, his jaw tight. Sarah knew something was wrong before he spoke. "What happened?" she asked. He hung his hat on the hook. "Ran into someone asking questions. Said he was looking for a woman from Boston. Pregnant. Traveled with her husband west." Sarah's heart thudded painfully. "Thomas," she whispered. Lucas nodded grimly. "Said he made a mistake. Wants to make amends." Her hands gripped the edge of the table. "He took everything I had, Lucas. I don't want to see him." "You're sure?" he asked gently. "He's the baby's father." "A father doesn't abandon his family," she said, steady now. "Thomas made his choice." Lucas studied her face, then nodded. "He could cause trouble. The law still calls him your husband." Sarah's stomach twisted. "Then what can I do?" Lucas hesitated. "There's one way to keep him from taking you or the baby away." "What way?" He met her eyes. "If you were married again to someone else, a legal husband would protect you and the child." Sarah stared at him, stunned. "Married to you?" "On paper," he clarified quickly. "You'd have my name, my protection, that's all." Her throat tightened. "You'd do that? Take on another man's child?" "I brought you here under my word," Lucas said simply. "I intend to keep it." Sarah lowered her gaze. "What about your heart, Lucas? You're still grieving." His voice softened. "A man can grieve and still do what's right." 2 days later, they stood before the Justice of the Peace in Copper Ridge. It was a simple ceremony. Lucas wore his cleanest shirt and a string tie. Sarah's dress had been mended to fit her swelling belly. Mrs. Abernathy and the children stood as witnesses. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the justice said, looking uncertain at the unusual pair before him. Lily clapped her hands. "Does this mean she's our real mama now?" Sarah bent down, smiling through tears. "It means I'll always take care of you, sweetheart." That night, after the children were asleep, Sarah sat alone in her room, staring at the gold band on her finger. It glimmered softly in the lamplight. She was married again, but this time it felt different. Quiet, steady, safe. A knock at her door broke her thoughts. "Sarah?" Lucas's voice came softly. "Come in." He stepped inside, hat in hand. "Just wanted to make sure you're all right. Today was unusual." Quote, "That's one word for it," she said with a small smile. He nodded. "I want you to know, I expect nothing from you. This was to keep you safe, nothing more." She studied his face. The honesty there made her chest ache. "Thank you," she said softly, "but perhaps we could be friends, real friends." His lips curved faintly. "I'd like that." They talked for an hour, about small things at first. Boston winters, ranch work, the children. Then she learned something new. "I wanted to be a doctor once," Lucas confessed. "Studied in St. Louis before my father got sick. Had to come home." "That explains the medical books in your study," she said. He smiled a little. "Emma used to tease me about, play in, doctor, every time a calf sneezed." The sadness in his voice had softened now, replaced with gentle remembrance. When he finally left her to rest, Sarah felt an unfamiliar warmth inside her chest. Maybe friendship could be the start of something neither of them had expected. Weeks passed. The summer heat came hard and fast. Sarah grew heavier, slower, but still determined to help. Lucas insisted she rest more, but she refused to be useless. "You don't have to do everything," he told her one afternoon as she hung laundry. "I need to stay busy," she said. "It keeps my mind from wandering." "To Boston?" "To the past," she corrected. That evening, as a storm gathered over the hills, they sat near the fire. Rain drummed softly on the roof. "Have you thought of names?" Lucas asked. Sarah smiled faintly. "If it's a boy, William. If a girl, maybe Emma." His head turned sharply. "Emma?" "I understand if it's too painful," she said quickly. He shook his head. "No. I think she'd like that." Lightning flashed outside, and thunder rolled across the plains. Sarah shivered. "I think the baby will come soon." Lucas frowned. "Too soon?" Before she could answer, a sharp pain gripped her belly. She gasped, clutching the arm of her chair. "Sarah?" Lucas was on his feet instantly. She tried to breathe through it, but another contraction followed. "Lucas, it's time." By the time Mrs. Abernathy arrived, Sarah was in labor. The house became a storm of its own. Lily crying, Daniel pacing, Lucas praying in the hallway. Hours later, just before dawn, a baby's cry filled the house. "A girl," Mrs. Abernathy announced with pride, "healthy and strong." Tears blurred Sarah's vision as she held the tiny bundle. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Hello, Emma." When Lucas entered the room, exhaustion and wonder filled his eyes. Sarah looked up. "Come meet your daughter." He hesitated only a moment before taking the baby into his large, gentle hands. "Welcome home, Emma," he said softly. Sarah watched him, her heart swelling. In that moment, she knew the man standing beside her wasn't just her protector. He was something much more. The weeks after Emma's birth passed in a blur of sleepless nights, soft baby cries, and the smell of milk and wood smoke. Sarah's body ached, but her spirit had never been stronger. Every time she looked down at her tiny daughter's face, she felt a peace she'd never known before. Lily adored the baby, proudly fetching blankets and singing made-up songs, while Daniel, quiet and careful, drew detailed sketches of his new little sister sleeping in her cradle. Lucas often stayed up through the night to help, pacing the floor with Emma in his arms, humming softly until she settled. "You're a natural with her," Sarah said one evening, smiling as she watched him. He chuckled quietly. "Had some practice with Lily, but this one's got her own mind already." "She loves you," Sarah said softly. Lucas looked down at the baby in his arms. "She's part of you." "How could I not?" The simple words made Sarah's throat tighten. Something was changing between them, slowly, steadily, like the seasons. One night, after the children had gone to bed and the fire burned low, Lucas spoke quietly. "Sarah, I need to say something." She turned from the cradle. "What is it?" Quote, "When I found you that day at the Stagecoach stop, I was thinking only of my children, what they needed. I wasn't expecting to feel this." Sarah's heart pounded. "Feel what, Lucas?" He met her eyes, like a man who's found something he didn't know he was missing. "I care for you, Sarah, not just out of duty." The room went still. Sarah searched his face, finding nothing but truth there. "I care for you too," she admitted quietly. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his breath. "Then let me court you proper, even if you are already my wife." A nervous laugh escaped her. "That doesn't sound very proper, Lucas Crawford." He smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but it sounds right." That night when he kissed her, it was soft and uncertain, but it lit something deep inside her, a warmth that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with love. From that day, life on the ranch seemed brighter. Lucas brought her wildflowers from the range. He left small notes on the kitchen table, little things he'd never done before. The children began to notice too. Lily teased them mercilessly, while Daniel just grinned and went back to sketching. 3 months later, when Emma was strong and chubby, Lucas came in from the fields one morning with a quiet smile. "Mrs. Abernathy's agreed to watch the children a few days. There's a cabin up in the mountains. Thought maybe you and I could use a little time away." Sarah's cheeks warmed. "Are you sure that's proper?" He tipped his hat, that playful spark in his blue eyes. "We're married, ma'am." The cabin sat in a meadow surrounded by pine trees and wildflowers. There was a clear creek nearby and a small porch that looked out over the valley. They spent the days walking by the stream, talking about the future, how they'd raise the children, expand the ranch, and maybe someday add another room to the house. That night, by the fire, Lucas took her hands in his. "Sarah, I'd like to make something official. I want to adopt Emma, give her my name, my protection. She's mine in my heart already, but I want it to be legal." Tears filled her eyes. "You'd do that?" "She's family," he said simply. "And so are you." She kissed him then, and this time there was no hesitation. The firelight flickered across the walls as they held each other, the outside world fading to silence. For the first time, Sarah felt whole again. Not because she'd been rescued, but because she'd found a partner who met her strength with his own. When they returned to the ranch, everything felt different. The children ran to greet them, and baby Emma reached for her father's beard, giggling. The house that had once been lonely now echoed with laughter. Winter came early that year, painting the fields white. One cold evening, just as Lucas set another log on the fire, there came a knock at the door. He opened it cautiously and froze. A man stood on the porch, covered in snow, hat in hand. "Thomas," Sarah whispered. Her former husband looked older, thinner, worn by life. "Finally found you," he said. "I heard you had the baby." Lucas's voice was calm but cold. "You need to leave." "I just want to talk to my wife," Thomas insisted. "She's not your wife anymore," Lucas said firmly. "She's mine." Sarah stepped forward, her chin high. "Thomas, whatever you came for, you won't find it here." Quote. He looked around the warm, tidy room, the children's laughter from upstairs, the smell of stew on the stove. "You really built a life here," he said quietly. "I did," Sarah replied. "One built on honesty, not empty promises." Thomas hesitated. "She's my daughter." "She's our daughter," Lucas corrected. "And she's staying right where she belongs." For a long moment, Thomas stared at them both. Then he nodded once, his shoulders sagging. "I suppose I deserve this." "Yes," Sarah said softly, "but you can still make something of yourself, just not with us." He left without another word. The door shut, and the only sound was the crackle of the fire. Sarah turned to Lucas, her eyes glistening. "It's over." He pulled her close. "You're safe now." "All of you." She nodded, resting her head against his chest. "For the first time in a long while, I truly believe that." Time passed. The seasons changed. Circle C Ranch grew, the family grew, and love settled over them like sunlight on open land. Daniel discovered a talent for drawing and building. Lily dreamed of teaching like Sarah once did. Baby Emma learned to walk, her first steps between her mother's arms and her father's steady hands. Years later, on a quiet evening, Sarah and Lucas sat on the porch watching the sunset over the fields. The sky glowed orange and rose above the ridges. "Do you ever think about that day at Willow Creek?" she asked. "Every day," he said. "I went there for supplies and came home with my whole life." Sarah smiled, her eyes soft. "I thought I'd lost everything that day." "You found something better," he said, squeezing her hand. "We both did." They watched as the last light faded from the sky, the ranch quiet except for the sound of crickets. Sarah leaned against him and whispered, "I love you, Lucas Crawford." He smiled, kissing the top of her head. "And I love you, Sarah Crawford." Yesterday, today, and all the days ahead. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying their words out across the open land. A promise born from heartbreak, built on kindness, and held together by the wild, enduring love of the West.